Hi, I'm a PhD student in Dr. Shi Xinglu's lab, and today I want to share some information about SARS-CoV-2 with you. The COVID-19 pandemic began in December 2019. As of today, the characteristics of this virus and its method of transmission remain poorly understood. In particular, whether SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus behind COVID-19, can be transmitted through the air is a major issue that must be addressed. Accordingly, we focus on whether SARS-CoV-2 can be spread through the air. Specifically, I shall share with you the information that I currently know, particularly the experimental and the clinical evidence concerning the airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2. So, what is airborne transmission? Airborne pathogens are defined as small molecules that can first be attached to the air particles, second, be suspended in the air for a long time, and third, remain active in air for a long time to be transmitted. We know that several pathogens such as measles and Mycobacterium tuberculosis can spread through the air, and we now wish to know whether SARS-CoV-2 can as well. Next, how are aerosols with the virus produced? Droplets of all sizes are produced when we cough, sneeze, or even exhale, and these droplets may contain pathogens. If the virus is wrapped in droplets larger than 5 micrometers, the droplets will drop to the ground after traveling for a certain distance because of gravity. However, we can still come into contact with these droplets, which enter our body through our mouth and nose. Such contact is currently considered to be how SARS-CoV-2 is mainly transmitted. The crucial consideration in airborne transmission is not these large particles, but the tiny particles that virus can attach to in the air. When the diameter of droplets exhaled by us is less than 5 micrometers, they are considered tiny and they can be mixed into the air. These droplets are called aerosols, and aerosols spread farther than large droplets do. In any case, you are more likely to be infected through droplets than through airborne aerosols. This is because the distance of droplet infection is relatively short, and droplets contain more virus than aerosols do. Furthermore, the farther aerosols travel, the fewer active virus they contain, making far-traveling aerosols less likely to infect someone. Although we do not currently know the virus dose required to make someone have COVID-19, we can surmise that the probability of aerosols infection is not high. So, considering the evidence, please don't panic. But also please don't neglect prevention as well. Next, we talk about the current research on the airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2. In April 2020, an article published in the New England Journal of Medicine compared the aerosols and surface stabilities of SARS-CoV-2 against those SARS-CoV-1. The study artificially generated aerosols, and they created aerosols with viruses. According to their experimental results, viruses can exist stably for at least 3 hours in artificial aerosols. Because of this study, various media outlets phonetically reported that the virus can spread through the air, persisting in the air for at least 3 hours. However, we must know that the experimental environment is different from the actual environment. The droplets produced by artificial, experimental aerosols are quite different from the drops emitted by our sneeze or exhalation. the actual environment is visual to the virus, making the virus unable to persist in air for a long time. So, okay, let's look at the finding of some clinical studies. Several studies have been conducted at the ward where patients with COVID-19 were hospitalized. They collect air samples in the ward to test whether the air contains the virus. What's interesting is that the results differed between the studies, which were conducted at different places. For example, a study published in the journal titled Infection Control and Hospital Epidemiology tested the air in 6 wards. Some of these wards housed mild patients, and the other wards housed severe patients. No RNA of the virus was detected in the air, regardless of whether the patient wore a surgical mask. Another study tested the air at different parts of the same ward. In their findings, the air nearest to the patient contained the highest rate of positive SARS-CoV-2. However, the amount of RNA was small, especially in part of the ward farther from a patient. Finally, another study collected air samples from wards housing patients with COVID-19, some of whom wore a surgical mask. In that study's result, in ward housing patients who didn't wear a surgical mask, 40% of the ward had SARS-CoV-2 RNA in its air. However, in ward housing patients who wore a mask, no virus RNA were detected. And finally, how can the airborne transmission of SARS-CoV-2 be prevented? According to these research results, we can see that the virus can indeed exist in the air, but not for long. Nonetheless, more evidence is required as to whether the virus can be transmitted through the air, specifically whether it can remain infectious as it travels. In general, we cannot say with certain that SARS-CoV-2 cannot be transmitted through the air. We can adopt the following measures to guard against possible airborne transmission. First, wear a mask. As noted in the aforementioned study, patients who wore masks released less virus into the air. Mask wearing is thus crucial to protecting ourselves and others. Second, practice social distancing. As also noted in the other aforementioned study, there is a greater concentration of virus in the air closer to the patient. Therefore, we should keep a safe distance apart from each other to prevent the virus spread. Third, stay in a ventilated environment. It seems contradictory that a well-ventilated environment prevents airborne transmission. However, a ventilated environment is more volatile for the virus, which reduces the concentration of virus in an environment. Moreover, aerosols evaporate quickly in an unstable environment, which makes the virus relatively more inactive. In summary, don't panic. However, take precaution to protect yourself as well as others around you. And let's hope that this pandemic will be over soon. Thank you for listening.